Have you ever wondered why some people seem immune to fashion? As if they live in a parallel universe where trends mean nothing? Think about it. Most people rush to wear whatever shirt suddenly becomes a uniform. The hairstyle that spreads like wildfire. The slang that dominates your feed today and sounds absurd next month. But among that chaos, there's always someone different. Someone who doesn't play along. Someone who doesn't even look where everyone else is looking. They aren't rebels seeking attention. They aren't trying to look mysterious or superior. Their disconnection from fashion runs deeper. Their mind works differently. These people walk the same streets as you, breathe the same air, yet remain untouched by the contagion of trends. It's as if they have an invisible filter that blocks the noise of the crowd. While others scramble to fit in, they stand firm, comfortable in solitude, unshaken by social pressure. So what lies behind this resistance? Is it arrogance? Or is it freedom in its purest form? Not following fashion isn't just about refusing a style. It's about refusing psychological submission. Every trend, every viral phrase, every must-have product acts like a small test of obedience. It asks one simple question: will you follow? Those who don't follow fads silently answer no. And that small refusal reveals something powerful. It shows a mind that values authenticity over approval, curiosity over imitation. The psychology of such people can be traced to what social scientists call internal locus of control, the belief that life's direction comes from within, not from external approval. When you live this way, you don't need validation to confirm your worth. You define it yourself. This independence makes them unsettling to others. Because every time someone walks calmly without chasing trends, they break the choreography of the crowd. The crowd, in turn, feels exposed. The person who doesn't follow fads becomes a mirror, reflecting everyone else's dependence on acceptance. Most people fear isolation. They fear being different. But for the few who see through fashion's illusion, solitude isn't emptiness, it's clarity. It's the quiet space where the mind can finally breathe. Psychologically, these individuals demonstrate high self-differentiation, the ability to stay connected to society without losing their individuality. They live in the world, but they are not ruled by it. They don't reject beauty or creativity. They simply refuse to outsource their identity to marketing algorithms and influencers. And here's the paradox. The less they seek to impress, the more influence they gain. Their calm indifference becomes magnetic. Others mock them first, then imitate them later. It's how every great cultural shift begins, with someone who simply said no when everyone else said yes. But the story goes deeper. Not following trends isn't just personal freedom. It's an act of quiet rebellion against control. Fashion, in clothing, language, or ideology, works as a social filter. It divides those who obey from those who question. When you wear what everyone else wears, you declare allegiance to the system. When you step out of that rhythm, you threaten its stability. And that's why people who don't follow fads are often labeled eccentric or arrogant. Society punishes difference because difference exposes control. Yet these same individuals are often the ones who later redefine what's cool, what's true, and what's free. So next time you see someone who doesn't care about what's trending, don't underestimate them. They might be living proof that freedom still exists in a world obsessed with imitation. They aren't running from the crowd. They've simply stopped needing it. Their silence is louder than 1,000 influencers shouting for attention. Their calm is defiance. Their difference is power. The deep psychology behind nonconformity. What makes a person truly immune to trends isn't luck or accident. It's the result of mental conditioning, a kind of psychological armor built through years of questioning, reflection, and sometimes pain. Let's go beneath the surface. When someone resists fashion, they're not merely rejecting a shirt, a phone, or a slogan. They're rejecting the invisible system that says, this is what you must value to be accepted. Fashion isn't just fabric. It's the language of social approval. And those who step away from it are essentially saying, I no longer need your language to speak. This is why society reacts with unease. In a world that equates sameness with safety, the one who chooses independence looks dangerous. Not because they harm anyone, but because they remind others that obedience was always optional. Psychologists have long studied this paradox. From Carl Jung's concept of individuation to Erich Fromm's theory of escape from freedom, the message is the same. Most people prefer comfort over authenticity. They trade inner truth for outer belonging. Those who don't follow fads take the opposite path. They confront discomfort. They're willing to feel the sting of isolation because they value integrity over inclusion. This creates what modern psychologists call authentic autonomy, a state where external trends no longer dictate inner choices. Such people aren't hostile to society. They simply operate on a different wavelength. They've learned that real confidence isn't built by being admired, but by staying whole when no one's watching. Consider this. When you scroll through social media, most of what you see isn't self-expression, it's self-replication. Each post, each outfit, each opinion is shaped by invisible social incentives. Likes, shares, approval. It's a constant, exhausting performance. But those who refuse to perform have something others crave: mental quiet. They're not trapped in the feedback loop of external judgment. Their self-worth doesn't rise and fall with an algorithm. That mental stillness gives them an enormous advantage. They can think more deeply, move more slowly, and act with precision. Over time, that difference becomes destiny. While the crowd chases what's next, they build what lasts. From a neurological perspective, this autonomy even shapes the brain differently. Studies in social cognition show that nonconformists often exhibit stronger prefrontal control, the brain's ability to inhibit automatic imitation and emotional contagion. They can see the crowd's emotion without being swallowed by it. That's not arrogance. That's self-mastery. And yet, this mastery comes with a price. Those who don't follow trends often experience loneliness at first. They're misunderstood, sometimes ridiculed. But over time, that solitude becomes fertile ground. It transforms into creative energy, clarity, and inner peace. You can see this pattern in history. Think of Alan Watts, whose ideas inspired this very topic. He didn't reject fashion just in clothes. He rejected intellectual fashion. In an age obsessed with status and systems, Watts dared to speak of fluidity, presence, and consciousness. Or look at Steve Jobs, who famously wore the same outfit daily, not out of rebellion, but to conserve attention for what mattered. The same mindset appears in writers like Virginia Woolf, musicians like Miles Davis, and countless others who refused to let the crowd dictate their rhythm. They all shared one psychological trait: inner orientation, living by internal values rather than external pressure. It's not that they disliked people, they simply refused to build their identity through imitation. And here's where the story deepens. Not following fashion isn't about asceticism or cynicism. It's about awareness. The moment you realize how trends manipulate attention, you begin to see their true purpose, not to beautify life, but to control it. Every new trend acts as a signal: follow this or be left behind. But when you learn to watch that mechanism from above, you see how fragile it is. You understand that trends don't create belonging, they manufacture dependency. And the one who refuses them becomes dangerous precisely because they cannot be controlled through fear of exclusion. Their mind becomes their own territory. In that mental freedom lies the foundation for everything else: creativity, resilience, even love. Because only those who stop imitating can truly connect, not through performance, but through presence. To the average person, this kind of calm confidence looks mysterious. But it's not mystery. It's mental discipline. It's the fruit of refusing to let marketing define meaning. They no longer need to shout, post, or display to prove they exist. Their power lies in being unseen yet unshaken. That's the paradox of true individuality. The quieter it is, the louder it resonates. If this message resonates with you, subscribe now. Join the few who choose awareness over imitation and keep walking the path of freedom. When you understand the mind of someone who doesn't follow trends, you begin to see a deeper truth. Fashion isn't only about clothes or aesthetics. It's a mirror of collective psychology. Each new trend exposes the human fear of invisibility. People chase trends not because they love them, but because they dread being forgotten. The new becomes a shield against the terror of feeling irrelevant. But those who resist fashion see through that illusion. They've realized that being remembered for imitation is still a kind of disappearance. They operate from a different equation. Belonging, self equals slavery. Belonging plus self equals freedom. And to keep the self intact, they're willing to sacrifice applause. Fashion, in all its forms, is built on repetition. It needs constant change to survive. But true individuality doesn't age, it deepens. Every trend eventually expires, but authenticity compounds. That's why people who ignore fashion seem timeless. They don't age with cultural cycles because they never signed the contract of imitation. Their style, thoughts, and way of being feel permanent, even when the world around them keeps mutating. It's not magic, it's focus. When your mind isn't hijacked by what's trending, you regain something most people unknowingly trade away: time. Think of the hours people spend scrolling, comparing, consuming. Those hours could have been spent creating. The nonconformist invests attention like capital, directing it towards skills, knowledge, or experiences that endure. That's why their calm becomes power. While others are reactive, they're deliberate. While the crowd burns energy trying to stay relevant, they accumulate inner wealth, patience, self-respect, originality. And over years, that creates a chasm. Because trends move in circles, authenticity moves forward. But there's a darker side to this freedom. The one who doesn't follow fads must face society's subtle punishment, being labeled different, cold, or strange. Humans evolved to survive through belonging, so every rejection feels like a threat to survival. The brain interprets exclusion as danger. That's why resisting fashion requires more than taste. It requires psychological endurance, the ability to withstand social disapproval without collapsing into conformity. Sociologists call this the cost of authenticity, the emotional toll of standing apart. But here lies the paradox. Once you endure that cost, the fear disappears. The criticism becomes irrelevant. Freedom becomes habitual. And that's when something fascinating happens. The crowd that once rejected you begins to imitate you. Because authenticity, even when feared, attracts. You can observe this cycle everywhere. A musician ignored for being too different becomes the sound everyone copies. A thinker dismissed as weird becomes the next generation's mentor. A small group that resists conformity ends up defining the next culture. The irony is brutal. The crowd eventually turns nonconformity itself into fashion. Authenticity becomes another product. The market will sell uniqueness in packages, slogans, aesthetics. But there's always a difference between the original and the imitation. The first walks by choice, the second by trend. This is the psychological law that defines modern society. Rebellion without awareness becomes conformity in disguise. That's why those who truly resist trends don't even identify as rebels. They aren't reacting to the system, they've stepped outside of it. They no longer define themselves by what they reject. They simply are. And in that stillness lies real freedom. At the neurological level, this freedom feels like peace. The brain no longer burns energy worrying about belonging or image maintenance. It stabilizes. It begins to perceive the world with more clarity, empathy, and curiosity. Because once you stop performing, you start observing. Once you stop chasing, you start choosing. Those who don't follow fads see through the mechanics of collective manipulation, how corporations use scarcity, envy, and comparison to keep people restless. They recognize that fashion is not a celebration of self-expression, but a profitable cycle of insecurity. When you buy the new, you aren't buying fabric. You're buying reassurance. And when reassurance fades, the system offers you another trend to chase. The few who see this pattern step out of the loop. They may still wear what's beautiful, but they wear it consciously. They may still participate in culture. They understand that freedom isn't the absence of influence. It's the ability to choose which influences enter your mind. And here's the ultimate truth. To not follow fashion is to see clearly how every social trend, in clothing, belief, or ideology, works as a test of attention. Whoever controls your attention controls your life. Those who resist have reclaimed the most valuable currency in existence: awareness. Their reward isn't applause. It's serenity. Because once you stop needing the crowd's reflection to know who you are, nothing can threaten your identity. The psychology of true freedom. To live outside the gravity of fashion is to rediscover yourself. When the noise of trends fades, what remains is silence. And in that silence, you meet the person you've been hiding beneath imitation. The people who don't follow fads have mastered that silence. They move through the world with quiet awareness. They're not in a hurry to prove anything. Their steps are measured, their gaze steady, their choices deliberate. It's not detachment, it's direction. They've realized something simple yet rare, that every external label is temporary, but your inner rhythm is permanent. And once you align with that rhythm, life stops feeling like a race and starts feeling like creation. The world teaches conformity by fear, fear of being invisible, excluded, or outdated. But those who stop following fads discover that the worst fear was never real. They lose followers, but gain presence. They lose applause, but gain clarity. They stop existing for mirrors and start living for meaning. This is where psychology meets philosophy. Alan Watts once said that freedom isn't about getting what you want, but about wanting what you already have. People who don't follow fashion understand this intuitively. Their sense of worth doesn't depend on novelty. They find beauty in repetition, depth in simplicity, and power in self-knowledge. To them, the real luxury is attention, the ability to focus on what matters while the rest of the world is distracted by the next update. Every time a new trend demands attention, they ask one quiet question: does this bring me closer to truth or just closer to noise? That single habit separates them from the herd. They aren't enemies of culture, they're its hidden architects. Because by refusing to be shaped by the collective, they end up shaping it. The calm thinker becomes the voice of the future. The silent artist becomes the standard others copy. The individual who refuses imitation becomes the blueprint for authenticity. And yet, even in their influence, they remain invisible. Their satisfaction isn't in being recognized. It's in knowing they stayed loyal to their own compass. You can feel it when you meet such a person. Their energy is grounded. Their speech is slow. There's no desperation in their eyes. They move as if they own time itself, because they do. They haven't sold it to algorithms or trends. The world mistakes their peace for arrogance. But it's not arrogance. It's freedom, the kind that can't be marketed or mimicked. And you can build it too. It begins with small acts of resistance. Not buying the thing you're told to need. Not copying the language everyone else uses. Not pretending to like what everyone pretends to love. Each small no sharpens the mind, strengthens the will, and reconnects you to something that cannot be purchased: self-respect. With time, those small refusals turn into a quiet revolution. Because when enough people stop chasing fads, the system that depends on imitation begins to crumble. What replaces it isn't chaos, but consciousness. A society where identity is chosen, not sold. So if you've ever felt out of place for not following what's popular, don't see it as a flaw. See it as a sign. A signal that your mind is already walking ahead of the crowd. And when the next wave of trends arrives, as it always does, you'll be able to watch it pass without being swept away. Because the truth is simple, and it's liberating. Fads need followers to exist. Freedom doesn't. And the moment you understand that, you stop being part of the audience and start becoming the author.